science environmental official. And from March 2020 to July 2021. She worked at PAMA as project coordination. And from January 2024 to June 2024, she worked at Good Neighbors International in Vietnam as income generation official. About scientific research activities, she now is published one papers named Evaluate the Possibility of Wastewater Treatment Biogas Recovery Combined Nitrogen using duckweed species of bulgur in northern Vietnam condition. I'm sorry, that is the one project, and one published paper is assessing vulnerability to flood hazard of households in Phong Nha Thao, Vũ Trạch district of the province, published in 2024 in Journal of Science and Technology Development, Engineering and Technology. And the paper already scanned and upload on the drive that's shared with all committee members in the CV. So later you can look on that, so we can consider to give us some marks in for this paper. Thank you.
So please, member, have any questions or comment on the CV of student and conditions for the defense? So if no any objection, so please students can briefly present your thesis within 12 minutes. Please.
Good afternoon, CC and everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Vũ Thị Hải Yến, and I am here to present my thesis, Vulnerability Assessment to Flood Hazard in Phong Nha Thao, Vũ Trạch District, Quảng Bình Province. Firstly, I would like to thank you very much my supervisor, Dr. Tạ Thị Hoài, and Associate Professor Nguyễn Tài Tuệ for their invaluable guidance and support throughout this thesis. My present consists of 6 main parts. The first main part is introductions. You know, climate change has intensified flood risk in Phong Nha Thao, driven by sea level rise and extreme weather such as typhoon. Phong Nha Thao home UNESCO World Heritage Site Phong Nha Cap and Phong Nha Kẻ Bàng National Park. However, the serious damage in the park was shown in this slide. This picture shows flooding is a study earlier. Next part is the literature review. Why there are many been studied on flood in Quảng Bình, but there is a limit in the assessment of flood vulnerability on household locally for Phong Nha Thao, considering physical, social, economic, and environmental factors. So the objective of the study, the first is to investigate the variation in vulnerability to flood and to propose and to evaluate proactive measures to mitigate the impact of flood based on vulnerability results. This slide shows the true research question and hypothesis. Next part is the methodology. The methodology consists of 4 methods. The first method is indicator set establishment for flood vulnerability assessment. U23 indicator were after listed based on IPCC 2007's approach and modified published indicator for to fit practical data and information of the study earlier. This indicator exposure, indicator sensitivity, and indicator analytic capacity here. Second methodology is sociological investigation. I conducted in-depth and semi-interested interview in October 2023 and April 2024. Sample size, I surveyed 200 households, 20 per residential group, and conduct in-depth interview with an environmental officer and 5 tower official. Sampling method and household were even distributed based on same size calculation with 5% margin of error and an 85% confidence level. Same size. Some pictures. So I interviewed in Phong Nha Khao. 200 were surveyed in semi-structured interview. Phong Nha has 10 residential group here. So third method is data normalization. Data normalization were used for 3 kinds of indicator. The first is quantitative indicator, semi-indicator, semi-quantitative indicator, and qualitative indicator. So data sound indicator collect from survey, statistical yearbooks, and report from the Phong Nha Khao people committee. So methodology for is vulnerability assessment of household to flood. I focus IPCC 2007 they normalize from 0 to 1 scale for 10 residential group and wood house, and is 5 level vulnerability from very low to very high. Next part is the results. The first result is exposure. Flood exposure in Phong Nha Tower. You can see picture the normalized value of exposure indicator for 10 residential group, and the exposure level is different for residential group. This picture shows that 10 per 10 residential group, so high and very high exposure to flood. Cham Mé and Củ Lạc Một is the list group demonstrated the highest exposure. Result exposure of Phong Nha Tower to flood hazard. The range is exposure value is 0.69, highlighting to tower high flood exposure. The second result is sensitivity. This picture shows the normalized values of sensitivity indicator for 10 residential group, and the sensitivity level different for each residential group here. So 8 per 10 residential group, so medium sensitivity to flood, and Phong Nha and Barao demonstrate high sensitivity to flood. So Avantis sensitivity component value is 0.5s, suggesting medium sensitivity across to tau. Third result is adaptive capacity. This picture shows value of AC1 to AC9 indicator for 10 residential group in Phong Nha Tower. So the result, the value of AC for 10 residential group. This picture shows that 5 per 10 residential groups, so a high adaptive capacity to flood, and 5 per 10 residential groups, so a low and medium adaptive capacity group. Cham Mé and Bạc Sào Con demonstrate is the lowest adaptive capacity to flood. So the value of the adaptive capacity component with value 0.56 indicating a medium level adaptive capacity. So result 4 is the variability. Chậm mẻ is variability to at 0.65 indicating the highest vulnerability. 2% digital group high vulnerability and 8% digital group medium value vulnerability. So as vulnerability assessment 0.57 indicating medium vulnerability level for entire Phong Nha block, and despite the medium vulnerability levels, the significant need to enhance the analytic capacity of the tau, particularly for digital groups like Chậm Mẻ and Củ Làm Một, which exhibit a high vulnerability level. Table correlation between component E, S, and AC. Some key observations. The first, in most areas have a high and very high exposure to frag, and vulnerability to tau is medium. 2% digital group have a high vulnerability to frag. Sensitivity and adaptive capacity are general, medium, and high approach risk. However, some adaptive capacity methods should be improved. Regarding to address this vulnerability, high exposure, high sensitivity, and low adaptive capacity, I propose 7 group solutions here. Finally, so conclusions, this study highlights the significant vulnerability in Phong Nha tau and provide comprehensive solution to mitigate the risk. Overall, vulnerability in Phong Nha tau value 0.57 indicating a medium level. Chậm Mẻ and Củ Làm Một digital group a high vulnerability to frag with the value 0.65 and 0.61. Also need to current mitigation stress and enhance listen in frag-borne community, especially Chậm Mẻ and Củ Làm Một. And urgent action include relocating high-risk household, enhancing infrastructure, promoting frag resident practice, support diverse livelihood, and develop micro insurance scheme. So I would like to thank you very much, my supervisor, Dr. Tạ Thị Hoài, and Associate Professor Nguyễn Tài Tuệ, for their invaluable guideline. I also attend my gratitude the local and resident of Phong Nha tau for support and their cooperations. Lastly, I thank Vietnam Japan University for allowing me to conduct this research. Thank you for listening, and I'm now to open any questions you may have.
Oh, thanks, Yen-san. Now please, Ishikawa Yuki Sensei, make your comment first.
Okay. Thank you very much, Yen-san, for your good presentation. So I'd like to read the reviewer's comment. First of all, the necessity, scientific significance, and particularly of the topic. The present study addressed the vulnerability assessment in Phong Nha town, Kwang province, which is frequently affected by typhoons. There are many reports of vulnerability investigations in Kwang province, but there are few reports in Phong Nha town. This town is important because it has a national park that is registered as a World Heritage Site and is a valuable tourist area in Vietnam. and the originality and relevance of the topic. Most of the vulnerability assessment focused on the coastal area in central Vietnam. The field survey location in the present study was Pho Nha town in Quang Binh province. The study which have investigated this town are rare, and the advantage is the number of the household in the survey is a lot. The historical research is well investigated. And regarding the disadvantages, I think this is basically very good, and the originality was well revised compared to the previous time. However, there are still several parts to revise the thesis. Last time, I asked to revise the methodology about two things. One is the scale of the equation was not correct, and the second one is the description of the survey was confusing. And regarding the first point, according to the thesis, page 36, the vulnerability scale was -1 to +2, and then converted into 0 to +1 scale with equation 2. After calculating the vulnerability score with equation 1, how did you standardize it? Because the vulnerability score can be calculated from exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity according to equation 1. Then only one value will be delivered in each discrete district. Then did you standardize within 10 residential groups? I do not think you needed to convert into 0 to 1 scale. So for example, let me share the screen. So this, now it's... So can you see this? Yen-san?
Just to say,
For example, yeah, okay. I think there are 10 residential groups. Now I said 11. I just set the, how to say, on purpose. It's not, it was not delivered from the survey, just I said, and I just compared what is happening if the normalization did. And now, for example, I said the exposure in research 1 group is 0.1, sensitivity 0.1, and adaptive capacity 0.5. Then equation 1 from your equation is -0.3. And like this, I calculated, and this is actually the vulnerability calculation by IPCC. And I will mention it later, but anyway. And after that, if you convert into, if you normalized, after calculating this in each residential group, then the value will be like this. But I don't think you need to do this. So my question, is my understanding correct? So first of all, you calculated the vulnerability, then you standardized like this. So what you did, I want to know what you have done. Yen-san? Yeah, but because I don't think you need to recalculate, re-standardize. If you use the equation 1, then you can use the equation 1 score. You don't need to normalize with equation 1, equation 2. Yeah, because the value is different if you normalized. So I don't think, if my understanding is correct, then you don't need to standardize normalized with the equation. You just use the calculation with equation 1. That is my point, one point. And another point is about the equation. I found two equations on page 36 and 38. So there are two equations too, but these two equations were a bit different. So on page 36, there was no explanation of the subscript I and J, and also I could see the extra I in the equation 2 on page 36, so please correct it. And the second point is equation 1. you referred to IPCC 2007, but I don't think this equation was described in IPCC 2007. So, what is the correct equation in IPCC 2007? AR4. Usually, vulnerability, LVI from AR4 is another equation, not the equation 1 that you described. Then, what is the correct reference of the equation 1? That is one point. And another point is, I acknowledge the methodology description on page 41 to 43, 42, but please revise the scope of the research on page 18 because it's still confusing. So, and also on page 42, you referred to the SurveyMonkey website. However, referring to the website as a reference source for equation 3 is inappropriate in my perspective. So please cite the appropriate reference for equation 3. So that's all for me. But my question is, equation 1. I am still questioning the correct reference of the equation 1. So, you know the correct equation in IPCC 2007, and what is the correct reference of the equation 1? That is important point for me, because depending on that, the calculation is different. But that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ikishara Sensei. Next, Anna, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor But dear committee members. And I also agree with the very detailed comments by Dr. Ishikawa. And I'd like to share my assessment content for in-science thesis. First, the topic is high necessary scientific and practical significance about the originality and relevance of the topic. The study shows the non-duplication of the topic, the correspondence between the topic and content, between the content and the training program, and proper and reliable methods, data collection, social surveillance, the processing have been performed in this study. However, more convinced explanations and discussion on key findings of this study with previous studies, especially the research, a practical approach to flood hazards, probability and risk assessing and mapping for province Vietnam needs to be considered and to ensure the originality of the current research. You already try to improve the research and try to see the limitations. However, you need to have more convinced explanation in order to ensure the originality of the current research. About the advantage, I highly appreciate the efforts of Yen-san to improve the thesis following the comments of committee members of the internal defense. And there are many advantages such as the study methods and proper and reliable semi-structured interviews of 200 households was conducted, which 130 interviews were performed by the students, and the results are interesting and necessary for minimizing the vulnerability to flood in the study area. However, in order to improve the thesis, some points need to be considered. At the session related to fundamental concepts such as vulnerability, flood hazards, climate change, or conceptualization. Literature review on vulnerability assessment methods of climate change-induced hazards need to be added. Literature review should be arranged more logically. For example, you mentioned about the indicator-based assessment methods, the literature review on that, and then you move on the concepts of flood vulnerability. But in fact, the literature review about the concept should be presented before the other methods. And when discussing the related previous review studies such as you mentioned about time and studies, both advantages and disadvantages should be discussed. In the study, you only focus on the limitations of the previous research. And in section 2.1, the study area should be presented in chapter 1. Now in chapter 2, we mentioned about the introduction of the study areas. That's also presented in the first chapter. However, the chapter 2, in my opinion, should only present the methodologies, not the introduction of the study area. The next one also related to the same consideration as Dr. Ishikawa raised about the normalization methods for indicators should be presented before the normalization and assessment for the dimensions, exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity. These data analysis methods need to be presented after sociological investigation methods. Now the order is indicator-based assessment methods, and then move on to the data analysis. However, you need to do the social survey before the data having the data for analysis. So that's the logical structure and presentation of the methodology. And this part also is very hard for the readers to check the data for assessing the exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity assessment following each indicator. Now, we try to give the nominalized data and explain the data. However, the raw data for assessing and normalization is very important. So you need to insert or add the raw data before the assessment and the discussion on the normalized data. And discussions need to be improved, such as the discussion on differences among indicators and variability dimensions, exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity of each residential group. Especially results of the current study needs to be compared with the results of the previous similar studies for answering the originality of this research that I mentioned previously. And in addition, discussion on impacts of climate change on flood hazards and variability in the study areas need to be added to ensure the expected learning outcomes of MCCD program. Of course, flood is a typical disaster induced by climate change. However, because our program on the climate change, and then you need to discuss, even you have some citations of the related and previous research, but you need to explain how and how the climate change affects on the flood hazards in the study area, and how the climate change can affect on the variability of the local people in the study area. Because the program on NCCD, however, I couldn't find any information about the link between the hazards and variability and the climate change. And the solutions need to be presented in a short table. And the description of the paragraphs is not presented in a very long table. So in the solutions, you try to link between the results and the solutions. That's also a good point. However, you should not use a very long table to present that. The conclusion for the first research question and objective need to be added properly. Now I couldn't find any key information or conclusion for the first research question about the factors affecting on the variability. The recommendations to be revised to limitations. Actually, you have the part of the recommendations. However, just only the limitations of the research is not the recommendation, because the recommendation of the research already presented as a conclusion. and especially, so please follow strictly proper citation. Also, refer data and information needs to be cited properly, and citations in the paragraphs and reference list need to be matched. For example, there are many citations and reference I found in the paragraph. However, I couldn't find in the reference list. And check the grammar and revise some typo errors and follow strictly the format regulations by VGU. For example, VGU also has a regulation. It's not the guidelines, the regulation. So that you have to follow all the formats in order to pass the technical check by the academic and student welfare office in order to get the degree, and it will take time. And I have 3 questions. The first question, how to classify the quantitative, semi-quantitative, and qualitative indicators for normalization? As I mentioned in the internet defense, you use a lot of normalization methods. But now we try to classify the 3 different kinds of indicators: quantitative, semi-quantitative, and qualitative, for different methods of normalization. But actually, I found that's just only one way of normalization following OECD guidelines. And then the question is how to classify different indicators. The second question, you mentioned in the thesis about the V correl or the variability correlation index. My question is how and why? How? Because I couldn't find the information of variability correlation in the methodology, and how is it calculated, and why you need to calculate the variability correlation instead of the normalized variability data. The third question, because the research question, those research questions, the first, you have 2 research questions. The first research questions are factors affecting on the household variability, and the second question is on the solutions, research questions. And the second research question is clear, but the first question on factors affecting on the household variability is not really clear. And then it's just only mentioned about the quantitative assessment, variability assessment, but not the factors affecting on the household variability. And then how they are different with the components and dimensions of household variability. Is that clear about those 3 questions? Is that clear for you about those 3 questions? Okay, yeah. In status, some limitations, but this meets the basic requirements for the master dissertation as a MCCD program Vietnam shared by the university, and the student needs to revise thesis following committee members' comment.
Thank you. Now, please student answers the question and comment from the reviewer first, and then our committee member will put an question and comment. Please, please.
Some question from TCC about if question IU from minor 1 to 2 about the information for in section 2.3.1 is the value of this is the group exposure sensitivity and analytic capacity were calculated according to the advanced or indicator component the vulnerability to increase the group about IPCC 2007 include one so often obtain vulnerability value from equip 1 are on a scale of -1 and 2. The value was then converts into the data on the 0 to 1 scale by applying equip 2 follow UNDP 2006 for zoning. About question from Francis Day. The first is how to classify the semi-quantitative and quantitative for different methods, right? Since method should be normalization, I propose a method in OCD. In page 36, I due to dimensional Z data styles, the indicator you assist vulnerability for mixture different units. The data must be normalized using the 0.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, I understand about the quantitative, semi-quantitative, and qualitative indicators. But you need to understand about the data analysis. There are 4 kinds of the data. It depends on the data. It's not in the indicators because now you have a quantitative assessment, and then all the data, all kinds of the data, also types of the data, yeah, will be normalized. Yeah, for quantitative, and then you don't need to have the quantitative, semi-quantitative, qualitative indicators because the indicator itself just is the indicators. And whether it's a quantitative or qualitative depends on the kinds of the data. It's not the indicator. The indicator you can assess on the quantitative or qualitative. Okay, so, yeah, and then you have, normally you have 4 kinds of the data. Nominal, ordinal, interval. Okay, and then all kinds of the indicators, even the qualitative data is not the quantitative data indicator. Okay, yeah, even you have the qualitative data or the nominal or the ordinal data, and then you will use the same equation by OECD because the mean max method just only one equation. You have different methods for normalization. Okay, and then now even you have different kinds of the data, it's not different kinds of the indicators. Okay, you have different kinds of the data, but then you use the same, just only one method, mean max. Okay, yeah, and then you don't need to classify into so many, not so many, but some different normalization methods, and it may make not only the readers very difficult for understanding, but also misunderstanding about the characteristic of the data. For example, you have the yes or no. Yes or no just only 0 or 1. Okay, so 0 or 1 you also follow the min max, and then you don't need to have different kinds of the indicators. You have different kinds of the data, not indicator. Okay, and then I recommend just to just only have different kinds of the data, but one normalization method is min and max, because that's also very famous and common methods used by UN. We don't have 3 methods, just only one method. Okay, that's my comment. And how about the second question about the variability correlation and how? Because it's not included in the method. And then, if you use a variability correlation, you have to add properly in the method section. And why? Yeah, why you need to use a variability correlation in it? Yeah, how and why?
So, vulnerability level, I have a file level in your vulnerability correct because IPCC 2007 and normally to 0 to 1 scale.
Yeah, I understood that. But you have the variability correlation. So where's the equation for calculating the variability correlation?
About vulnerability populations, I very just vulnerability correlation vary from equal 1 on scale from minor 1 and 2. Some value was then converted into data as a 0 to 1 scale by applying integral to focus UNDP 2006.
What's the equation for calculation and why you calculate the variability correlation instead of the data on variability assessment only?
Without vulnerability calculations is vulnerability on a scale from 0 to 1, but I exist in minor 1 to 2 to vulnerability correlations.
So, but in the methods you mentioned about the normalization methods, that also Ishikawa sensei asked you from the scale -1 to 2, and then you mentioned in the thesis that use the min-max equation. It's not the correlation like this, right?
No.
Yeah, so we must use the other equation.
To solve the vulnerability to determine the level of vulnerability here. It's from apply to mean the from minor 1 to 2 to 5 level.
Yeah, I understood that. Yeah, you use the equation min-max for normalization, the range of variability from -1 to 2.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but it's not the data for variability correlation, right? Why use the word of correlation?
This here is
But you mentioned, yeah, exactly. You mentioned you use the min-max, and then the min-max, that's also the equation for correlation, calculating the correlation.
from to minor 1 to 2 to the vulnerability corrections.
Okay, then you have the problem that Ishikawa sensei already mentioned. Yeah. So we check very carefully about that. Okay.
some questions. So for the expressing supply, social, economic, environmental, and infrastructure factor contribute to how vulnerability to fraud. I identify different risk group and result about exposure, sensitivity, and
I understood that. But so you have three components, all the dimensions. Okay. Exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity. Okay. So are they the factors affecting on the variability, or just only the component of variability?
so when I design
The components and the factor affecting on the components, are they the same or different? If they are the same, and then you can keep the research question and objective. But if they are not the same, and then you don't have any data and result for the first objective. Is that clear? If the objective is such as to assess quantitatively the variability of flux, how so to the flux, okay, and then you already have the data. But if the objectives on the factors affecting on the variability, and then I couldn't see the factors affecting on the variability. It says the factors affecting on variability and the components, exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity, the same or different? So that's my question.
There are most components and factors. So when I have a key observations, I propose sourcing others
In my opinion, that will be different. For example, the factors of such as the climate parameters, the rainfall, the temperature. And then, for example, if you mention about the rainfall or the temperature, that means that's how many degrees and so on. Okay, but that's only the characteristic of the climate parameter. It's not the factors. Why the temperature increase or decrease? That's the factors affecting on that. So I don't think that's the same. Yeah, and then if it's not the same, and then you have to change the research objectives and research question, or you need to add the information to support the research question and objective.
focus and social, economic, and physical environment most component and factor to vulnerability.
Is that those?
So now, please proceed. Yasin Taka, please.
Akazuki sensei. Akazuki sensei.
Yeah. Email is still here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, internet environment not good maybe. So your research seems to be very well. I'm not sure about the detail of your study, but I thought this kind of study result was very, very nice. The detail points, details pointed out by Miss Ishikawa's as well. So I would like to add that comment
Kasim say, if you could confirm
I have
for
a
us to
question
hear.
about it. Question. Can you make the priority order the proposed solution among AC1, AC2, and AC5? So, second question is, do you have a possibility second question is, do you have a possibility to proposing a method to estimate the impact of the proposed solution in the future based on your approach? I'm sorry, I don't Could you understand my two questions? So, the presentation and the result is quite good. So, I added two questions.
Yes, we can hear you.
This is all my question and comments.
Thank you, Sensei.
I think the first question is the priority of the recommendation, especially for the adaptive capacity. But I don't get the second question.
The future research, the similar approach can be applied to estimate the impact of the proposed solution. So I want to comment about the possibility of the future study plan, if possible.石川さん、日本語でちょっと言いますね。要するに、提案された方法のインパクトです。インパクトを似たような方法で評価する研究っていうのはできるのかっていう、似たような方法でできるのかっていうことに関する質問でした。
インパクト。
実際に実行した時のインパクトみたいなことに発展させる可能性とか考えて使ってみます。ちょっと難しかったです。
実際にここで、出した研究の結果を、実装したときにっていうことですよね。実装したときに発展、どう発展していくか。
そういうことにも使えるアプローチが使ってるんですね。
実際的に使えますかっていうことですかね。この研究結果をもとに社会実装できますかっていう感じですか。
社会実装をした時のインパクトに似たようなアプローチで積もったりすることができるんですかということです。
実装した時のインパクトに似たようなアプローチで評価できるか。実装した時のインパクト似たような方法っていうのは、今の方法は、そのブルネラビリティアセスメントで、その
似たよう
な指標に似たようなっていうのも、このようなブルネラビリティアセスメントが、すみません、ちょっと待って、ポイントとしては、すみません、何を聞いた？
すみません、質問が
すいません、はい。わかりました。ありがとうございます。Sorry, so please don't read the second question. So please answer the first question only. So yes, first question is the priority of the adaptive capacity of the recommendation in your thesis. So you raised many recommendations, but it's a priority of the recommendation. That's his point. Yen-san, do you understand?
Can you repeat?
Okay. So his question is, what is the priority of the recommendation of the adaptive capacity? It's because you raised many recommendations in your thesis. So what is very important? What is not so important, but I don't say that it's not important, but what is the most important? For example, like this, so priority, please let us know the priority of the recommendation.
Please respond.
About for solution regarding the vulnerability from without, I want broker priority and recommendation. The first is about proximity to solve issue. I propose relocation with footprint management and upgrade drain and early warning systems and allow
Sorry, Yen-san. He mentioned the adaptive capacity, not exposure sensitivity, but adaptive capacity. Recommendation of the adaptive capacity, what is the priority? So I think in your research, in your thesis, you also raised many recommendations in adaptive capacity. Like this, from adaptive capacity 1 to adaptive capacity 9. And between these adaptive capacity, what is the priority of the recommendation to be implemented?
adaptive capacity
Yes.
yes, about three indicator low adaptive capacity. The first limit the livelihood diversity IC1. Low adaptive capacity I propose solution of livelihood training and support and community based livelihood into initiatives causing share, result, and cooperative, and about IC2 participation in disaster training IC2 low adaptive capacity. So I propose solution community-based program develop localized training using local language and knowledge and in engaging training of convenient schedule and incentive to increase participations and about fire particular participation in property insurance very low adaptive capacity. So I recommend public awareness campaign and educate community on fraud risk and insurance benefits and across for insurance options. Develop micro insurance product and community-based scheme. Yeah.
Sorry, Yen-san. Sorry, his point is, you raised now AC1, AC2, and AC5. Not raise each recommendation, each priority, but individual priority, but please choose one of them between AC1, 2, and 5. And please provide the reason.
I recommend the probability is language training and support is very necessary for Phong Town because in Phong only focused agriculture, so it's very vulnerability. So in this language training and support provides skill and finance and by on community by livelihoods initiatives sales for some result and cooperative is here.
Okay, thank you. So you think the priority is AC1 because of the agriculture training is very important for them, and their main livelihood is agriculture. So is my understanding correct? Wakazuki 先生、大丈夫ですか？
This is
I understand. The AC1 is the most important, most important priority.
Thank you, Professor Wakatsuki. So now please, Jun Sensei.
Yes, thank you, Professor. Actually, I agree with the comments of Ishikawa Sensei, especially Sensei. I will like to add some small comments. The first one is the citation. Although she did the citation, however, some area when she mentioned about the data, the citing, the reference was not cited. For example, in page number 8, the citing for the data block damage in province is missed. And also the same in page number 9, citing for the data on global damage caused by floods is also missed. So recheck all the, how to say, the area where you, how to say, use the data from other authors of this site is proprietary. And also I found some phrase, it's not very clear, the understanding. For example, the phrase, the more recent IPCC method in the second level field study had conducted flood vulnerability assessment using the more recent IPCC 2014 method. It's not very clear. So please rewrite it so that we can understand what you mean. About the structure of the thesis, I also agree with the Sensei, because in the chapter 1, you already overview the study site, but in the chapter 2, you continue to introduce about the natural condition. Yeah, it's not reasonable. This part should be moved to the chapter 1. And about the materials, I found that the primary and secondary data was not very clearly mentioned. You should mention clearly which kind of secondary data was used. You already mentioned the source of the data. However, you didn't mention which type of data was used in that kind of source. And also, it's very difficult for me to find out the number of interviews was conducted. There is not mentioned in the materials part, but it's mentioned in the methods part. So although you already mentioned it in the method part, but you have to mention very clearly which kind of data you use for your research. Yeah, so only some small comments. Okay, I don't have any question.
Thank you, Mr. Sensei.
Do you have any response?
About material I used for the second the study collect primary and secondary data on the site, including national, economic, cultural, social, tourism, infrastructure, human, and the environment. The primary data is from survey, questionnaire, and response to alternatives in-depth interview. And the second data is to refer to application related to fraud vulnerability assessment report on next you are planning to 2030 public province and from any report from being
Yes, I sorry to so this time, for example, about the primary data, you say that you collect it from the surveys and questionnaires, so you should mention here, 200, interviews were conducted. So it's very clearly. But I have to look very later. I have to look at it, looking for it and found it in the method app. So in this part, you should mention, about that. And also for secondary data, you said that you collect it from previous published articles. So it's not very clear, right? So you should mention that which is the main source you used and which kind of data you used for each source. So it's very clear for the other the readers.
Since I collect data from primary and secondary data in so primary data I from survey, questionnaire, and response in the interview. So I think it's I think this sound is most visible and from a report in Phong Tower. This I collect secondary data. I publication related to vulnerability assessment and reports from Town from 2019 to 2023.
So later, this writing more clearly.
So our committee member, she has any more questions, comments on the thesis?
Many questions. There are many questions.
So if not, please supervisor make a comment, please.
Good afternoon, Sensei, students. Thank you so much for the useful and valuable comments of all members of the evaluation committee. I appreciate Yan Sang made a great effort to finish her master thesis. As you know, the study area is in Quảng Bình province, is quite far from Hanoi, so Yan Sang try to went to the field trip many times to have a survey there. Also, during the interacting her, sometimes she feel disappointed. I encourage her to present in the conference and write a paper to submit to the journal. And with her hard work and persistence, she submitted. She had chance to present in the conference for young scientists, and her paper was accepted in the Science and Technology Development journals. So and now today she can finish her master defense. So that's thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hoài. So now we have closed door meeting. Ishikawa Sensei.
Yes.
So you can make a first. Now we have master thesis evaluation rubric already have, right? This one.
Yes.
Yeah. So now based on the rubric, you might propose your score for the student, please.
Sorry, actually in online still there are several students in this room, so the host should, how to say, limit people to attend this time.
Pardon?
Because now other students are attending in this room. But now it's okay. Yun-san is here.
Yeah, I understand Ishikawa Sensei, Takatsuki Sensei will let's give the assessment of the form.
But still Yun-san is here. Is it okay to start the closed meeting? Okay. Yes. About the score. Total score or individual score?
Individual.
Individual, okay. The content of the master thesis is 5.2. In the format of master thesis 1.4. In presentation skill 1.0. And the achievement of scientific research is 1. And the total score is 8.6.